Okay, we're gonna go over real quick how to do like constraints and the tic-tac-toe thingy. Cool? Sound good? All right, I'm gonna go through this really quick, and if there's any part where, because I'm assuming if you don't tell me that you understand it, okay? If there's anything you don't understand, just stop me and I'll explain, clarify. Otherwise, I'm just gonna plow through this. Um, and tic-tac-toe you guys have all done, so you know, should be pretty straightforward. Single view application, TTT, demo, responsive, next. And this is recorded so you guys can, if you don't remember all of this, just go back and forward to that place where you need to find it. All right, so got a view controller, that's good. Storyboard, that's good.
You signed up. You don't. No. Okay. Good. Have a seat. I'll tell you what I did in just a second. Can you do me a favor while you're doing that? Can you just go select your project? Okay. So you guys probably see this section here, and it says no team or add a team or create a team. That means you haven't signed up for an Apple developer account, which is fine. You don't have to have an Apple developer account to build stuff directly on your phone. You have to have it to distribute to the App Store. I didn't explain this well, I'm sorry. You have to have it to distribute to the App Store and to make over-the-air builds. Then you need to have an Apple developer account. Without it, you can build directly on your phone. It's no problem. Okay? So I would recommend that you get an Apple account because you're going to end up at the end of this wanting to build something and put it up on the App Store because it's cool and it's fun and you want to learn that process. It's 99 bucks a year. It's cheap. So Mackenzie made hers, and she was getting this error here that said, I can't make this app, this bundle identifier is bad because she had com.codingdojo.beast, which means somebody else in here with the developer account made a com.codingdojo.beast bundle, and it was conflicting. So I just made yours com.codingdojo.mw.beast and then something. So just put MW after it. Just have your initials there, and then you'll avoid conflicts.
Okay. Yeah, I did that with the last project, but for some reason, maybe I tried another one that was also taken.
Maybe.
Because I'm like, okay, well, this is something else.
So anyway, yeah, just so you know, you don't have to have the account to build directly. Like you plug your phone into your computer to build like that. You don't need a developer account. That's totally legal and easy. And if you think about it, even if I just wanted to distribute my app to you guys, I'd have to provision every single one of your phones and plug it in and build it. It would suck for 7 phones. So I'm going to give you guys this outline here.
All right. So pretty self-explanatory what I'm doing, creating a view, and then just like giving it some constraints, right? Making a label, and I don't care about the battery thingy. So I'm just gonna put the label in there, just like pin it to this view, so it has those constraints. Gonna move it to the middle. Gonna give it TTT responsive, and that one's done. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the reset button on the bottom here, and then the winner prompt section, right? So let's go create a view. Let's drag it down here, and notice that I'm just placing it like at the very edge because I'm going to end up using percentages, and if I just place it close to the edge, then the percentages will just matter, like they'll match with the 100% height. So the thing I like to do with my views is I kind of just like to give it a color just so I can see it. Otherwise, it's really difficult to see with the white background. But right now, I'm going to give these guys some constraints. And this guy left, right, bottom, and then the height. And really, the height is something that I'm going to change programmatically. And I'm going to make it with percentages. So it's not going to these are just like the kind of dummy height constraints I'm giving it. But the thing is, I do need to make that constraint so I can drag it over later and alter it programmatically. Okay, so
Do you prefer using views versus stacks?
well, I'm gonna use the stack to build the grid for the buttons, but this one, you know, I should have made that a button. But what I can do, I can just see I made a view here, but if I want to assign an action to it, I have to have a button on there, or I can give it programmatically some kind of like event listener, like if you are clicked, run this function. But then that takes like that's like 4 lines of code. So instead, I can just make a button and just drag it on top of the view. Or get this view here. Whoa. Oh, it's this one. Yeah. It's going to fill it up and then give it those 4 constraints. So the button, all it cares about is just being inside of that view. So the view is the stuff that I'm going to change. Button will just adjust according to what that view is. So for that button, I'm going to name it reset. Give it like a white color, just so I don't have to mess around with that label anymore. Make it bigger. Cool. Now, create another label, or yeah, I mean, I'm gonna make a view, just to be, just to not cut corners here. And then I'm gonna put the label on inside of the view. So this guy is gonna go like this, and this will always be true, even if I do rotate, because I always want this prompt label to be on top of the reset one, right? So that's good. Give you a height. Add the 4 constraints. This guy, I'm gonna color it, purple. So far, I have constraints on everything. I don't see any error, like warning messages or anything, so that's good. Make a label, just put it on top of this. Just make it, span the whole thing. Just fit that inside of the view there. We can give this guy some, like a white color by default. Yeah, you gotta press enter for it to show up. Okay, so we got all the stuff that we want over there. Now, all that's missing is the stack view. So let's go ahead and create our stack view. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because think about it this way: if I put my stack view, well, I'm gonna drag one of the stack views over. So stack view is gonna look like this vertical stack view. It's gonna go like somewhere around, like ballpark, like this area here, right? Snap, snap, perfect. So I can go ahead and give it the left and the right constraint. That's no problem. Yeah, that's fine. I can go over here and edit that like this. See, I can give it the left and right constraint because that's never going to change. It's always going to be left and right. Even if my screen is horizontal, it's still going to be left and right. I'm going to use that. But then if I just went ahead and pinned this part to this gray title bar, then if I rotate, the title bar is going to go over here. And if it's pinned to the top, then the thing will be, it start from here. And I don't want it like that. I want it to be relative to the top of the view. So what I do is I select my stack view. I select this guy. I go up here and I select the view. See, the current distance is 84, but that distance doesn't matter right now because I'm going to change that programmatically. But the key here is it's really pinned to the whole view and not just like an element in the view. So I'm going to give it that, and I'm also going to pin it to the bottom of the view. And right now the distance is 212. Yeah. So the stack view does not care about these these you know these labels here, these other views. All it cares about is the top of my entire screen and the bottom of my entire screen and the sides.
Well, why did you pin it to the sides? The side view actually want it to be, let's say,
Yes,
your thing is on the right
I
side.
pinned it to the sides, but right now there's 0 distance from the sides.
Oh,
But
you
when I
can change
rotate it, I can give it left 50%, so it goes over like that. So I'm going to add those 2 constraints in there. And really, those numbers really don't really matter right now. I'm gonna, as long as I have the constraint, I can access that and just change it programmatically when I want to.
Show how to make outlets for constraints.
Yeah.
You guys are getting like this is expert mode here.
Okay. So I'm gonna drag this guy over like that. And the reason why I'm doing this is because with stack views, it's really hard to like drag it inside of the view like that. So I drag it to the sidebar. Okay. So inside of my horizontal stack view, I'm gonna have 3 vertical ones, like that. And the vertical ones or in the vertical stack view, I'm going to have 3 horizontal ones. And in the horizontal ones, there'll be 3 buttons horizontally, like that. So drag it over, make sure it's underneath. All right, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. And I go to this stack view, I make sure that these guys are distributed equally. Okay, so now if I look at each one of these, they're the equal heights. See that? No.
Background color stack views just see better.
Yeah. Right now the background is that color, but you can definitely do that. But I'm not gonna do it now because I want to put buttons in there. I want to give the buttons a color instead of the actual stack view. So the stack view generally is like a container to contain some things like buttons or views or anything like that. And those actual containers are really just kind of like helping you with the auto layout. They're not actual like things that you want to mess around with too much. They're just like a tool to optimize, like giving them auto layout constraints, because then it could get messy if you have a lot of grid elements. So button. I'm going to put some buttons inside of my stack views. So drag button over here, or why is it not letting me drag it in? Yeah, I don't know why. I've never actually had that happen. Like, why can it not go in? What the hell? Hmm. Oh, now it works. That was a really weird thing. I did like, any ideas? Damn it. Hate this trackpad. See how it's easier to like position things inside of each other if you're just dragging it to the side thing instead of
Yeah.
yeah. So for all of these stack views, I'm gonna make them fill equally.
Like all at once.
Oops. Cool. So I can give all these buttons a background view, background color. Just like black. Text color, I'm gonna make you white. And for these stack views, I'm gonna give them some spacing, maybe like 5. And then this stack view, give you a spacing of 5. So you can see the buttons. Cool. Alright, so it looks like we have all our stuff kind of like already in the storyboard here. Now, we're gonna go ahead and wire them up. Right? We're gonna close this guy, go over to a view controller code here, open up the assistant editor, find this storyboard, and we're going to start creating our outlets. And as you guys see now, it's all view, and we don't know what is what. But if we give it an outlet, this guy, top title view. So I like to make some comments here. Over here, we're going to do the stack view. That's going to be this guy. This is going to be winner view. This one. It's going to be reset view. That's this one. All right, so we got outlets for all of these guys. Now, let's see what we want to do. So let's run it. Let's see what we got. So let's run this. It's going to take a while to kind of build up, but all right. So this, make it my outlets. I like to do this. It helps to organize your code in these nice little chunks. No. My computer is self-destructing. Well, it's a good thing you're all here in case the video crashes. So sometimes this will happen. My computer is like really underpowered. It's like 1.1 gigahertz. This happens a lot.
You need that new
Yeah,
Pro.
I know.
MacBook Pro.
That's like if anything, like the one thing I need is just something that runs Xcode just faster. So I'm gonna have my outlet constraints on this mark, and over here, bottom here, this is gonna be the UI lifecycle. So if you go over here, you'll see that it's nicely divided. Three. Cool. Well, all right. So let's think about what we're gonna do next while we're waiting for that. Right. So we have all of our elements kind of like hooked up with our outlets. Do we want to add the functionality? No, we're gonna skip that because you guys have already done it. You guys want to see the layout stuff. Yeah. So cool. So let's think about it. So for we'll go from the stack view first. So stack view constraints. They're gonna be over here. So right now this guy is kind of pinned to the top and the bottom of the view. Now we should give it like an initial kind of styling or initial like parameters to say like what do you look like when you first show up. Okay, so here we can write a function, call it stack view init. This guy is my helper function, and in the stack view init I can say, because we have an outlet here, stack or self dot stack view dot we didn't drag the constraints in yet, so let's do that now. So for the stack view, we got this guy. What are our constraints? We have this top constraint here. That's something we're going to change. So stack view top 84. So we select this constraint and we're just going to control drag it over here to the stack view constraints. And I'm going to give it a name. Stack view top constraint. And you notice how it's going to be an NS layout constraint. That is the type. Right, so
Just drag it in like.
yeah, so now we have the bottom. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to control drag over, and we're going to name it stack view bottom constraint. So you only want to drag the ones over the ones you're going to change. So we're going to change the top and the bottom, and we're also going to change the left constraint. And the right will always be pinned to the right. Okay. So leading, that would be this guy. We're going to do this. Put it over here. Stack view leading.
So all of the stack views, just grab it.
Yeah. We're only grabbing the ones we need. We need to change, right?
Those three that are right
Mm-hmm.
Like top, bottom, left, right.
No, but there's a trailing one too. that we
Yeah.
can grab.
There's a trailing one, that's this, the side here, but we're not going to change that. So we're not going to need to have it in here. We could, but we're not going to use it, so we're not going to do that.
So you're sending it over to the right.
Right.
So it'd be the opposite.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you wanted.
So this is what we got. We rotate it. It's not going to look pretty. So that's what it's going to look like. See, my computer is like freaking out. Yeah. And that's what we expect it to do. Let's rotate it back. It's because the computer is running the graphics for this monitor, and this graphics card is like shitty. All right, so we're going to stop that to not consume too much processing there. So we have these three constraints. So now I can give it a stack view initial constraint. So I'm just going to name this function initial constraints just to make it all in one function. Initial styles. And in the initial styles, I'm going to say for the stack view, I want self dot stack view dot, or it's this one, stack view top constraint. This guy. When you have a constraint, there's a property on it called constant. That is the number that you can give it. So in the beginning, what do I want this top constant to be? I'm just gonna say I want it to be, yeah, I'm gonna want it to be 20% or something like that. So before I do that though, I'm gonna create a variable, or not a variable, but constant, and call it height. This guy is gonna be equal to myself dot view dot frame dot height. That is going to return me the actual height in pixels that whatever my machine is. So depending on what kind of phones you have, it's going to be different. So as long as I have that saved here, I can say, hey, I want your constant to be equals to height times 0.1 for 10%. Okay, so total height is going to be like something, but I can totally just print that out. I'm going to print this height just so you guys can see what that number is. Whatever that number is, I want it to times 0.1, which will be 10% of it. And that's the constraint for this top distance. Okay? So in the beginning, I also want stack view leading constraint dot constant to be 0. I want dot stack view bottom constraint dot constant to be equals to height times, let's say, 30%. The reason,
are you doing the landscape on it right now, or the portrait?
This is the portrait mode. This is the initial styles. This is the function that I'm going to run inside of my view did load. And I'll show you why I separated it out into its individual function, because I'm going to use this function later on another piece of code. So self.initial styles. So when the view loads, it's going to call this function. That function is going to run whatever it is inside of here. So this is like my helper function that I wrote. And I can just call that function to do the functionality in there. And what it's going to do right now, it's going to set my stack view initial constraints. So the things that I gave it when I did this layout in the auto layout, those numbers don't matter anymore. Right now, they're recalculated and they're reset. Okay. So for my stack view, that's really all I need for the initial constraints. Now, when I rotate this, I want these guys to be different, right? I want to set this top constraint to 0, the leading constraint to 50% of whatever the width is, and I want this bottom constraint to be 0. Okay, so
If you were to run it right now, it would look a little bit differently, right? Because you just get
yes,
like the bottom views is 30%.
yes. And the reason why I did 30% is because eventually I want this guy to be 10%. So the distance from the stack view to the top should be 10%. And I want the purple guy to be 20% and the reset to be 10%. That adds up to 30%. That's why I put 30% for this constraint here.
Can you run it?
Yeah.
Oh,
And when I run it this time, it's going to print out the height. It's going to show you how high it is. It's building it. So there's a function that you can run, and it'll detect if your screen has rotated. That's the function I'm going to use later. And I had to look that up yesterday. So if I rotate, it's going to be the same. But the idea is this is 10%. This is going to be 30%.
Not right now.
Yeah, it's not right now,
Okay,
but
okay.
it's, yeah. But you see how it console logged the height? That's the height for this iPhone 7 Plus that we're using. So I'm gonna take a look at the other this code that I have, which has that method because I can't really memorize it. But we're gonna put that method in here. It's called it's this one, override function view will layout subviews. Let's put that in here. That's this function. So in here will be the code to handle the rotation details when it does rotate. So in here, I'm gonna check if it's landscape. So, well, let's just check it right now. So print it rotated. Let's go ahead and run it, see what happens. Yeah, we're gonna need this guy. Oop. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and rotate left. Boom. It rotated 3 times, apparently. But let's rotate it back. It rotated 1 time. So whenever it rotates, this function is going to get run. Okay, so now the next step is putting this bit here is to check if it is indeed landscape. If the UI device orientation is landscape, that's a built-in function. And the UI device .current.orientation is going to be landscape or portrait. That's the Boolean there. It's going to check if it is landscape, it's going to print out landscape. Now, I'm not going to run that because just trust me, it works. So now in this code, we know it's going to be landscape. So we put in our code here to handle that change. And over here, it's going to be stack view. And what we had here before, we're going to basically copy it over and then just make those adjustments. But before we do that, we're also going to do, let's get rid of this print. We're also going to create these constants for the height and the width and the width there. So if you rotate, obviously the height and the width are going to be changing, right? So that's why every time it rotates, we need to redeclare these variables here. So self.viewDeframe height, that's the same. And we're going to make another one called width. Self.view.frame.width. Okay. Now we're just going to copy over our stack view code. We're going to put it in here. And this is going to be the landscape version of that. So we want the top constraint to be 0. We want the bottom constraint to be 0. And we want the leading constraint to be whatever the width is divided by 2 to move it over. Okay, so if we have that, then when it rotates, at least we should see the stack view move over. And everything else should be remaining at the same position. Let's go ahead and run that. Now it's telling me I'm not using the height, but that's fine.
So when you turn it, does your top stay the top?
Yep. Yep.
So when you turn it, this is still your top.
Nope. The top with whatever is on top. Yeah. It's a little slow, but it got it. It got that. Okay. So everything else didn't change because I didn't really write anything to make it change. But this guy did. And if I rotate it back, it'll go back to where it should be. It's just being, oh, okay. Why is it doing that?
Because we never changed it.
Yep, I didn't change it back to when it's portrait. Or so if this guy enters this condition, if this is landscape, else when it rotates, this is going to be portrait.
So run your helper function again.
Yes, so that's why I created this helper function, so I can reset the initial, the styles, like that. So now, that's all we do. Every time it rotates, it's either going to be landscape or portrait. If it's portrait, just make those previous styles.
Where's the self.view.frame.width coming from again? Is that just
That's just something that you need to reference if you want to get the device width and height. So the self.view is that anchor view that you build everything in.
is that the
That's this view. That's this view here. This guy.
okay on any device?
Yes.
Okay.
What happened to the other objects?
The other ones just stay where they are, because you didn't tell them to change. They're gonna not change.
Yes.
They're just gonna behave according to the auto layout constraints that you gave it.
But then if you had tagged them initially to the, let's say to the right side, right? What happens here, they're still tagged to the right side and
Yeah.
it's overlapping? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You see the purple, how it goes all the way to the end. They don't care. They just want whatever it
So
is.
if you want them to line up, you'd have to change that, the right constraint
Yes.
to
Yes. That's what we're gonna do
the
next.
stop view.
Okay, so it went back, right? So because we called that helper method again. So that's why I kind of separated these guys out, because I wanted to have a clearer separation. So now we're gonna run this top view constraints.
Animating the constraints.
No, I'm not. I could animate that, but
You can actually animate the constraint changes.
yeah, we can
So
save the
let's say-
animation too.
Let's say you have a table cell with a button on it. When you click the button, you want it to expand. You can actually animate that whole thing. So it's really powerful. Being able to send outlets and create outlets on the constraints opens up a whole world of cool stuff you can do.
Yeah. So for top view leading, I'm not going to change that, so I don't need this. Top view top, also not going to change, right? It's always going to be on top left. What I do need to change is this left thing, the left. Top view trailing. That is the constraint that I'm going to change. So I'm going to put this guy over here, and I'm going to say top view trailing constraint. I'm also going to change the height of it. So this top view is going to have a height, and I'm going to programmatically make that a percentage. Top view height constraint. And this guy, in the initial styles for top view, I'm going to give top view trailing constraint equals to dot constant equal to 0. I'm going to do self dot top view height constraint dot constant equals to the height times 0.1 for 10%. I'm going to copy this guy over to this when it's portrait mode, when it's landscape mode, top view. I want your trailing constraint to be the width divided by 2. That's 50% of the width. And I want your height constraint to be, let's do 30, 30, 40. So times 0.3, 30%. Now we have 2 more to go. So let's create this winner constraint, winner view. And we're going to go over to our winner view. We're going to need this guy's height. Drag it over here. Winner view height. We're going to look for this guy's trailing, winner view trailing constraints. This corner is always really hot, especially in the afternoons.
It's hot.
Really? That's cool.
Constraints And just since we're in here already, I'm just gonna do the reset view constraints, and I'm gonna look for my reset view. I'm going to need your width, your height. Constraint. And I'm also going to need your trailing constraints. Trailing reset view constraint. There we go. Set view. Like that. So now we have all the constraints that we need. So we got the winner. This is initial styles. Winner view. Self dot winner view trailing constraints dot constant going to be equals to 0. Self dot winner view height constraints dot constant. It's going to be equals to the height times 0.1, 10%. For, this guy won't be the 0.2. And then for the reset view, self dot reset view trailing constraint dot constant equals to 0. Reset view height constraint dot constant equals to the height times 0.1, 10%. So we got 10%, 20%, and then 10% again. These two added together will get the 0.3, which matches this. That's why I made these guys the percentages that I made them. So we got the top view here for the landscape mode. We need to get the top view. Well, we need to get the landscape mode styles for this winner and reset view. So we're just going to copy those over here, and all I'm going to do is just give it that winner view trailing constraint. I want it to be whatever the width is divided by 2. This height, I want it to be, the winner view, I want it to be 40%. This guy, I want to be 20% or 30%. So 30 plus 30 plus 40 will give me 100. So it'll span the entire height. And then this guy also width divided by 2. So now,
Would that shift everything to the right? How do we know which left or right?
it's a trailing constraint. So it's going to be trailing. So don't know why this guy is still.
Testing.
Sometimes these errors will just linger around and you have to like rebuild it to make it disappear. But
Yesterday I cut something out and then I repasted it back in and it was fine.
Yep.
I don't know what else I could have done.
It's
I was,
like
for 20 minutes I couldn't get this error.
Yeah.
Away.
So what it
And
does
I
is like
thought,
Xcode actually parses through your code and runs it to determine those errors. So like my computer is like really slow. So sometimes I'll get an error. While I'm typing something, it'll say it's an error. And then like I'm done typing it and it's still saying that's an error. And then I wait for like 10 seconds and the error's gone. Because just after 10 seconds has it parsed through that line again and told me that it's not an error. All right. So we're pretty much done here, right? If we switch, it should all shift over with all of those constraints, and if we go shift it back, it should just go back to that initial styles. So let's trade computers. All right.
You could use it if you want for your demos. Oh, wow! MVP. So good.
See? That's how you would do it. It's a little bit of, kind of use a little bit of math there to calculate the percentages. But now it doesn't matter what kind of screen you use. It's always going to be that proportion. Yeah, well, I could do another screen. It's going to load like 5 minutes to load up that new screen, right? But so that's pretty much it. I could totally make it like an iPad or something like this one, and then we'll just let it run for like 5 minutes. But any questions or kind of like anything I can illuminate for you guys further.
Is it easier with percentages?
Uh, it's the reason I use percentages is because for this specific application, I want it to behave with the same proportions, regardless of what kind of device I use. So if you were to build your own like project, you could use percentages. It depends on what kind of fits the context of what you're trying to do, right? So for this simple tic tac toe game, the percentages just makes it easier for me to kind of like make things so that they look consistent. If you don't give it percentages, then if you say like, hey, just 100 pixels for this top label, then if you use an iPad, it's going to be like tiny, right? Because 100 pixels on the iPad is going to be the same kind of proportion as 100 pixels on this phone, but the iPad is like so much bigger. It's going to be like tiny. So you kind of want, depending on how you want it.
So do all applications use this process, or would somebody choose to actually create another view that's designed for landscape? You know what I mean?
I think generally it's going to be like this. It would, I've never even heard of having like a different view to display different for different devices. It's there are things where you can do like hey, if the width is less than, or if you say the height is less than 300, give it these, run this function to apply these kind of styles. If it's over that, then run this function to apply this style. So it doesn't have to be landscape or portrait. You can simply say, hey, if you're using a device that is like longer than it is high, then do this style. If you run a device that's like higher than it is wide, then run this style. So yeah, but the thing is like for this one, there's actually this function here that actually triggers when the rotation has shifted, and that's when you would run this stuff. So if you were to do something like customized, you would have to figure out when do I run that function to check, right? So this is like a built-in thing that will check for you as soon as it rotates.
The calculator on the iPhone,
Mhm.
it turns into a scientific calculator.
Yep. Yeah, you can totally do that. You can, you know, anything you can do programmatically, like anything you can think of, you can pretty much do it programmatically. You can add elements, you can hide them, you can give them new functionality if you want, and it's like as long as you do it programmatically, you have a lot of control. So the interface builder stuff, as you can see, like I don't really care about like the initial constraints too much because I know later on I'm changing them because I always have this some sort of function similar to this initial styles where I'll define what I want this guy to look like when he first exists. And the reason I do that is so I can go back and just reset him if I need to. Right?
Perfect timing.
We're synced together. See, this is 10%. This is going to be 20%, 10%, and this is the rest. And if we rotate it over, it's going to do that too. Yeah, and you can put animations on these things, but I think animations should be another demo, just for individual recording, so that you can have access to that easily, and we'll do that.
Quick fire. So, question on the tipster thing.
Mhm.
If you go to the platform, it says to use those two empty stacks to like manipulate your responsive design. I guess if you did it like that, you wouldn't even need that because you would just do it yourself.
Yeah, I like having more control over my styling. So I would write things. It take you a little bit extra time to write your own custom things, but I feel like if you plan to scale your application at some point, you're gonna want to have that flexibility and not have it like because once you get enough elements inside of your thing, you're gonna get lost in what the auto layout stuff are. Or, you're gonna not know. But if you have like a reference like this mark, this is the initial style for this element. You just look in there and see, okay, that's this. Right? basics.
Tipster.
Yeah.
Inspired.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say, you know, just this is like a suggestion, not like a requirement. So these, yeah, for these assignments,